Well, this group of soldiers took us and took off all our IDs and took off all our overcoats and piled up all our belongings on a pile outside, and then took the rest of us and lined us up against the wall. Now, and then there were soldiers with machine guns, and there was bulldozers and dead bodies, and the bulldozers could knock over a wall and bury us. But these are things which I thought was happening to other people and not to me. Because all I did was I was very angry, because at this stage I was furious. I was too tired to be rational. I was too tired to be fearful. And I was angry that people who have just come back, who wanted to live in a home, wanted to see their grandchildren grow up, were treated this way. And I was thinking of my patients whom we have just operated on the few days before, being left in Gaza hospital. And I thought they'd probably get killed. And I think my mind was so overloaded with all these that I wasn't even frightened.
After a few days, it became clear that the militia had methodically worked its way through streets and alleys, slaughtering family after family. At least 1,500 people were dead or missing. The Christian phalangists had wrought their terrible revenge after the assassination of their leader, Bashir Gemayel, and the Israeli occupying forces had not intervened. For Swee, 6 years later, the memories are still vivid.
There can be no peace for this 70-year-old woman who walked 20 kilometers from South Lebanon to visit Shatila camp. To see her family, she came back and found all of them dead, with the exception of her old husband and a young boy who I operated on. I said, Haji, what have you got to say? Please tell me. I put on a tape recorder in Arabic. And she said, what can I say? What can I say in the memory of my children? Our flowers are still here. Our oranges give fragrance. Sparrows sing their usual songs. Yet Abu Zuhar is nowhere to be found. That's her elder son. Beirut, you took all I have. You took my last spark in life. My heart lies dead on your streets. The day when I actually switched from being exhausted, depressed and desperate, wanting to join everybody else and die as well, was when a group of kids came, and one of them was my patient. He's fractured his arm and I fixed it, and of course he thought I was dead, but he was glad to find myself alive. And all his friends came up and they asked me to take a picture of them. They stood before these bombed up buildings where a lot of them had their parents and families killed. And they said, we are children of Sabra and Shatila, and tomorrow they might destroy all the camps and there's nothing left, but today we're here. And if you just take a picture and then you have proof that we lived, you know, it's just that kind of will to preserve one's humanity that these kids were trying to get across to me. And of course, as I focused the camera, they just raise up their arms and say that even if we die, we are not afraid. And they tried to smile, and they did smile when I took the picture. So it is that sort of courage, you see, that really restored me. Actually, the Palestinian kids saved me emotionally.
The children's feeling for their roots struck a chord with Swee Chai. This is something she and Francis understand very well.
This is a little booklet that I just scribbled upon arrival in this country, just to let people know and to remind myself about home, and it's called And Bunga Raya Blooms All Day. It's a collection of poems and songs. This is about the high-rise flat dweller in Singapore. It goes like this. Soaring up high like a bird with no wing, glide like a kite on a string, viewing my world from the 21st floor, high-rise flat dweller of Singapore. Where will my kids go when I'm gone and dead? Can there be future ahead for sardine-packed people 2 million and more? High-rise flat dwellers of Singapore.
When I first saw the picture on the television of Beirut, it just looked, it was eerie. It looked as though our own flat in Marine Vista in Singapore was being bombarded. We lived in this high-rise flat just next to the sea, and we are on the 18th floor. I've learned from the Palestinian how to live in a building without walls, without electricity. And if you look at the way the women try to reconstruct their homes, build up, patch up things many, many times, and the hospital doctors, the Palestinian doctors and nurses of the Red Crescent Society, how they tried to rebuild and reopen the hospitals many times, again and again. It is just this human character which refused to be demolished, and which I've now come to a conclusion which cannot be demolished, even with bombs, with anything, with threat, with starvation. That really is so valuable. It is worth anything in gold or in wealth, you know. It is basically what's left in people. Huda is a Palestinian girl who lives in Sabra camp. They are a wonderful family with boys and girls. The girls went to school, and the boys, 2 of them were captured by the Israelis and never came back. And the tragic thing about the family is they won't believe that the boys are dead. So they waited for them every day, and it hurts to see the old lady actually goes out, and sometimes when she prepares the meal, you know, she said, oh, maybe tonight, you know, my sons will come back. She saw me from distance, she shouted at me, come and have coffee, and sat there and we looked at each other, and she started praising God, thanking God that Swee is here and all that. So she looked around for something to give me, and she couldn't find anything, and then suddenly she saw this, and she picked it up. She just made it, you see. And what happened was that there was nothing left, so she found a lot of telephone wires and dismantled the whole lot and wove it in a little basket. And you see, it's so difficult, you see, for me to, I don't know how to react. The thing is not to cry, yeah? And then she asked me, she said that, why you come back to Beirut? This was 85, after the destruction of the camp. What you like about Lebanon, you know? You have been through so much, you nearly got yourself killed and all that. So I said, you want to know the real reason? I actually came back to see the Palestinians. I did. Because I just felt that as a friend, that's the last thing I could do, and I just came back to see them. And then she said, take this and keep it with you all the time.
It was very much her love of the Palestinian people and their culture that inspired Swee Chai and a few others to found a charity to help them. These crafts add colour to their office, but the purpose of their work is medical, and Medical Aid for Palestinians, MAP for short, was launched in 1984 after 2 years of hard work when Swee returned from her experience of the massacre. Francis is one of the founding members and sits with Swee on the board. MAP sends nurses, doctors, anaesthetists and other health workers to Beirut. Among them are nurse Susan Whiten and surgeon Pauline Cutting, who in 1987 were caught in the siege of Burj el Barajneh and suffered with thousands of Palestinians terrible starvation.
Our standard fights, real nasty fights, are over whether other volunteers should be allowed to work in Beirut, seeing that there's so much risk and so on, you see. Yeah, I don't think you have ever challenged me if I want to go alone.
No, I think it's your duty.
But if I'm taking our whole team, you see, then we come into fights, and really nasty ones, because you will always say that, you know, I have no right to involve other people in the sense of risky circumstances, and I'll get angry with you for being a wet and all that. So,
oh yeah, I'll be as wet as possibly can because it involves others. But I think because it's your duty to go, I mean, and that's one of the, not penalties, but one of the decisions that...
Why is it her duty to go?
Because if I'm a coward basically, but if I were a doctor or a surgeon, I think it is a duty of all doctors and surgeons, because otherwise, what's a doctor for?
It was Pauline Cutting's message from Burj el Barajneh in 1987 which alerted the world to the appalling conditions of disease and starvation. Swee Chai immediately volunteered to go to Beirut to negotiate safe passage for the MAP volunteers.
There are barricades outside the camp, so she would just walk through or walk in, and if she stopped, she'll ask how can she get into the camp, and they'll say, well, the head of the militia would allow her. So she'd say, well, where is he? I'm going to go and meet him. So she goes off and meets him. and she can stay for hours waiting for the person until she pushes her way in. That's her style. I mean, that's the most important thing about her. She does not take into consideration and calculate the real dangers that she might face.
Eventually, the siege was lifted, and through Swee Chai's efforts, MAPS volunteers were given safe passage out. Swee went straight in with a new team to take over.
They wrote into the ambulance permission that only I can drive it, so it's just loading things into the ambulance, taking it out, driving it all across Beirut in a chaotic traffic. And to be a woman ambulance driver do cause a stir sometimes in West Beirut, but it's okay. To drive full of oxygen cylinders means that anybody who just accidentally shoot at this thing would just blow up the whole thing. Sometimes just to threaten you, they shoot at the wheels. Sometimes they shoot at the doors of the ambulance, and occasionally I just thought they might shoot at the ambulance and that's all of us finished. I think one day it's going to cost me my life. I might come back in a black bag. The only person I feel really sorry for is Frances if that happened.
Don't you feel for her safety when she's in the camps? I mean, she's really in danger.
Yes, I mean, without doubt, yeah. I mean...
Oh, that's
I
nice
think,
to hear.
Yes, I don't doubt that I do quite a lot. Especially, I mean, she's under several... I mean, she's more vulnerable than many people. Because she works in the front line, will be always in the firing line. But on the other hand, you think of others who are also having to face the front line. And she goes out in relation to teams of people. And because I'm involved in the charity that sends her out along with the others, you have to control, because you know that if you express that anxiety publicly, in a way you put her safety before others. So you have to have a certain degree of discipline, which is not easy, and I can assure you it's not every time she goes.
If she can, Swee will soon be back working with the Palestinians. But for the moment, she's glad to be in Hexham. She enjoys the contact with the friends she made at the hospital years before. But mostly it means long hours of duty, nights, and every other weekend away from home.
I retreat back into Hexham, to the countryside, to be among supportive people and to do work that I know I can do. To go back to do really very, very routine kind of orthopedic work is a good thing for me, because it takes my mind off worrying about Lebanon, worrying about our volunteers and the Palestinians, and I'm back to retreating into a very specialized kind of jobs. For instance, if I operated on someone's leg, I know that he's got a home to go back to. I know that the physiotherapist will look after him. I know that the nurses will give him his antibiotics, his parents and so on. His job will be safe for him. So it's a good feeling. So in a way, it's a rehabilitation for my very traumatized state. So it's really the pain. Yeah.
Do you regret not having a family?
No, not really. I mean, I love children, but they need not be my own children. And I think in a way, after traveling so much and seeing so many little children, you can see in this flat on the walls that kids of different kinds, and outside we've got kids from Europe, pictures of them, kids from my own homeland, Palestinian children, and they're all adorable, you know, and it is so good in a way not to have my own, so that I can really see them as equally precious. Since I don't have kids, then I think it's my duty to try and make other people's children happy.